It's no secret that I have quite a close working relationship with MOTONE Customs. When I first started out round about a year and a half ago, they were one of the few companies that took me under their wing, if you like, and were willing to supply me with review items when, I'm not ashamed to say, things were very hard. It's very hard to get your foot in the door in this line of work. Now, MOTONE Customs weren't alone. There were one or two other companies who did the same thing, and to that end I'm the kind of person that will never forget that. I will always try to accommodate them where I can. And where MOTONE Customs are concerned, obviously 6 months ago I started the Payday Projects series. I would just like to add that none of these companies that I work with pay me for the reviews that I do. This channel finances its own running, i.e. most of the money comes from me, and because of that I pick and choose what I review. If I don't like an item and I don't feel that I can recommend it, I don't do a review on it. MOTONE Customs is a very prolific producer of custom parts for the Triumph Twins, having what is probably one of the most comprehensive range of parts in the industry. But for me that makes it a really difficult balancing act, because I need to provide a good cross-section of reviews of parts from different manufacturers. And it is very easy just to take the easy route and go with what's being offered to you, rather than searching out products and procuring products that you really believe you should be bringing to people's attention. Now, because I've been doing the Payday Project series, I've been doing 2 videos a month on predominantly MOTONE parts for the air-cooled twin. But as MOTONE have been turning out new parts for the water-cooled twins, I have to admit what I've been doing with a lot of them is simply putting them to the bottom of the pile. It's a difficult balancing act, and what I don't want to do is make it look as though this channel is run by MOTONE Customs, and it could easily end up being in that position if I'm not careful. Now, as a result of that, MOTONE regularly send me bits and pieces through, and I've built up quite a cache of MOTONE parts that I haven't shown you. And then last week they announced to me 2 more new parts, one of which I was aware of, the other one I wasn't really aware of until recently, and I've got to admit I am rather excited about both of them. So what I've decided to do this week is I'm going to start working my way through the MOTONE Customs stuff, starting with the 2 newest products. And then next month, again to try and achieve some sort of balance, I'll start working with the other stuff that I have in storage. So that's enough waffling on. This week is going to be a MOTONE week. I have 2 items to show you. One I'm going to show you today, the other I'm going to show you in the Friday video. Now, there's been a lot of interest in brass parts recently. Brass is a lovely material that used to appear on motorcycles back in the olden days, the 1950s and 1960s especially, but due to the relative cost compared with other materials, they have over the years sort of disappeared, which is a shame because it is a material that's eminently suited to use on a motorcycle. Now, your foot peg for your gear changer is pretty universal in that it's usually just some sort of steel or stainless steel pin encased in rubber. Nothing particularly exciting, and a part that's often overlooked when it comes to making custom parts. Now, MOTONE have made some brass fuel filler caps in the past which have been immensely popular, so they've decided to start expanding that range, and obviously the gear changing peg is a logical place to start. MOTONE haven't gone over the top with this part. They've kept it simple and classic. It's basically an M8 stainless steel Allen bolt, but in place of your usual rubber sleeve, it features a ribbed brass cover rather than a rubber one, which keys in nicely with those brass and fake brass parts that Triumph have built into the bike at the factory. It's very different from anything anyone else is doing, and it's not the actual component itself here that stands out, it's the colour of the material that it's made from. The mixture of brass and high quality stainless steel gives this a really nice high-end prestige look to it, turning what is normally a rather mundane, ordinary piece of bike furniture into something very special. It's also quite reasonably priced, and to that end I think that it is going to be a winner. It'll fit both the air-cooled and the current water-cooled twins, and I'll very quickly go through it with you. Now, obviously the first thing you need to do is remove the standard peg from your gear change lever. In common with one or two other parts on these bikes, Triumph have overdone the thread lock a little bit, and quite a lot of force is needed to break the seal when taking the original part off. And I think this is one of those situations where once you've got it off, it is well worth cleaning out the thread in your gear change lever to remove the excess thread lock that's been left behind before fitting your new accessory peg. The problem being that if you leave that thread lock in there, what you have is a very, very tight thread. And in this case, the gear change lever is just alloy, which is quite soft. So this does leave you open to the possibility of overstretching the thread and stripping it while you're fitting your new component. And like I said, this applies to a lot of parts on the Bonneville. Anyone who carries out regular maintenance and modification of his bike will have a tap and die set, and you don't need an expensive one. One of the cheap Chinese ones will do the job, because you're not cutting a new thread here, you're simply using it to clean an existing thread out. It's a standard M8 1.25 thread pitch thread, and using your tap, just gently feel your way through the thread, making sure that you're cutting the thread lock out and not cutting a new thread. It's a fairly simple procedure. I think it's something that we all learn to do at school in metalwork. Once you've got your thread cleaned out, it's time to put your new brass peg on. Now, it is important that you re-thread lock this component when you're fitting it. And I would recommend just a standard blue thread lock, the type that could easily be removed with hand tools. But I'm not sure that the excessive amount that Triumph put on there is really necessary. Obviously, the toe of your boot is constantly pushing against this peg and trying to turn it, so it is essential that you do re-thread lock it. Now, this gear change peg does come well packaged in its own little box, and I suppose that you could say that it's already pre-assembled, albeit that it's simply a bolt inserted into the brass sleeve. It is a reassuringly heavy and chunky little piece of machinery that's been turned down into sort of ribs, very much like your average rubber gear change peg. Before fitting, you should smear your thread lock around the circumference of the end of the thread, and if necessary with your finger just push it into the thread. You don't need to go all the way down, just put it on the first 3/4 centimetre, and as you wind it in, it will spread itself along the internal thread. And then using your Allen key, simply screw the bolt into your gear change lever. Now, just a little tip here, before you sort of go in for the final tighten while you've still got some thread on that bolt visible, it might be an idea just to use a rag or some workshop wipes just to clean off any excess thread lock before fastening it in properly. The last thing you want is blue thread lock oozing out down the sides of the peg and spoiling the effect. Now, thread lock, generally speaking, has about a 2-hour hardening time. I suppose it depends on the temperatures and the weather. So you might want to leave it for at least an hour to make sure that that thread lock has taken hold, and avoid any danger of you loosening the threads before it's actually set. There's absolutely no doubt about it. In this case, brass is class. Maintenance wise, obviously brass does tarnish just like most metals. And of course you have the option of polishing it regularly with a good quality metal polish if that's what you want to do. But I think that generally speaking, just a wipe over with a cloth whenever you clean the bike will be enough to stop it from turning green long term. And personally myself, I like that slightly tarnished, dulled brass look, sort of a patina that comes with time. But ultimately it's each to their own. Now obviously I will leave a link for this part in the video description down below. On Friday we've got another groundbreaking custom part from MOTONE Customs, which I think everyone is really going to like. Once again, thanks for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you found it useful. If you have enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. As I've said, I will be back on Friday, so until then, please ride safely and I'll see you soon.